Hey, Jeff, this is Louie Gohmert.
It's our favorite Congressman Louie Gohmert. How you doing, my friend?
Best I know I'm okay.
Well, listen, today is tax day. It's also tax freedom day. We were discussing this because the Tax Foundation, they put out this deal every year of how long you got to work to pay your federal income taxes, really all taxes. And today's the day. April the 17th is the day that we're finally free from taxes. What is the concept of taxation on Capitol Hill? Is it really just another way to get more money to do what they want to do?
Well, no, that used to be the object of taxes, but as we have heard from this administration in their effort at the Buffett rule, they're trying to socially engineer what in their mind is fair, even though they recognize it really won't do anything to the deficit, really won't rein in spending, really doesn't help much of any way, except in this administration's minds collectively, it's what is fair is to screw over certain people and redistribute the wealth in America. So most of us used to think it was for generating revenue and to try to do so fairly, but this administration's made clear that they have a different idea of fairness, and that's what they're pursuing. Because if you really wanted to see the best and most effective Buffett rule, the Buffett rule would say that when you are part of a company like Buffett is, his own company, and you owe millions and perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars that the IRS is trying to collect, then you really probably ought to quit paying millions to your attorneys and accountants to avoid paying the money you owe, which Warren Buffett is currently doing. Instead, just write the check for what you owe. That would be far better than going out there and saying, look, instead of me paying all the money my company owes or what the IRS says my company owes, let's make everybody that's wealthy like me pay more money while I fight to keep from paying as much money.
This doesn't make any sense. But then again, it's Washington.
And really, Jeff, this ought to be the ideal opportunity to push through a flat tax.
Absolutely.
Everybody is saying, let's be fair, let's be fair. Of course, again, this administration has a totally different socialistic idea of what's fair. But if we really want to be fair, and you really want people who make more money to pay more taxes, people who pay less or make less to pay less taxes, then have a flat tax, a flat percentage. Now, I, like Art Laffer, I favor two deductions. One is for charitable contributions, and I'm not talking about Clinton giving away his underwear. I'm talking about real charitable contributions because we know, by and large, charities do a lot better job of getting money, aid, and assistance to those who really need it than the government does, and without near as much fraud and abuse. The other deduction is for a home mortgage interest deduction. And if I understand, when Art was explaining why he thought that was a fair deduction, if I understood correctly, it was basically when you pay interest on a loan, the bank has to pay tax on the interest you pay them. So why should you have to pay tax on what you're already paying somebody else to pay tax on?
Are we on a path that is sustainable? And if not, is there work being done in D.C. to make it to where we can get this tax thing under control and get spending under control? Well,
and that's the key. We will not be able to raise taxes enough to address our deficit. And the reason is, and it goes back to the old Laffer curve. Art asked Reagan and some advisors, how much tax do you bring into the federal treasury if you have 0% of tax? Well, they say, obviously, you bring in 0. So he's got a graph, and the upper line is the amount of money coming into the treasury. The lower line is the percentage of tax. Okay, so what happens if you raise the tax to 100%? how much revenue do you bring into the federal treasury? Everybody says, well, zero money comes to the federal treasury at 100% tax because nobody will work if they know every dime goes to the government. They don't get to keep any of it. He says, right. And then you draw a curve, not bell-shaped, but a bell, basically. At the top, he said, here is a percentage that when you tax at that percentage, you maximize the revenue coming into the federal treasury. Once you go higher than that percentage, then you start hurting the economy. People start working a little less because they're not going to be able to bring us home as much because, and in fact, a good example, when I was growing up in Mount Pleasant, we had a dentist, and this was back in, like 1959, 60. I was a little bitty kid. But we had a dentist we got a letter from who said he had been paying 70% tax, and he was tired of working so hard and bringing home so little of what he made, so that he directed his accountants to figure out how much he could work and bring home the same amount, and that he was going to be cutting his patients in half, a little more than half, and he was doing it on first come, first served. We were some of his newer patients. We'd only been there about 5 years going to that dentist, so he'd send our records to whoever he wanted. That's what high taxation does. People are going to start working less. So you really want to get the maximum amount of revenue for the federal government. Don't tax too much. You want to be fair, make it a flat tax so that no matter how rich, how poor, you're paying the same percentage. So if you make more, you pay more tax. And people like Warren Buffett can't spend millions to fight paying even more millions in tax. You pay the percentage. That would be fair.
Is this getting any traction in the House right now?
Well, it is among some, but we have, I think, leadership that's risk adverse. Let's just try to get through, and things are looking, like they may be okay for the election, so let's don't raise too much of a fuss. Whereas some of us are going, we're going broke. It's time to step up and do the right thing, fix the tax system, so if you make more, you pay more, percentage-wise. You pay the same amount as everybody, but you pay more actual money. That's what would be fair. And so, I don't know. It reminds me, Jeff, a lot of 2006 in January when our leadership, Republican leadership at our annual retreat had said, we were going to do big, massive tax reform this year, but there's a chance, tiny chance, we might lose the majority in November. So we're not going to do any massive reform this year. We're just going to try to get through. And then next year, January of 2007, we'll come back and do massive tax reform. And I got up and said, look, if you really think there's any chance of losing the majority this year, this has to be the year you do massive tax reform. You don't want to come next year, have lost the majority, and we didn't even try. Well, guess what? That was a minority position in the party. We lost the majority, and there was no tax reform.
Next year never comes.
It's time to step up and do it, but we've got to have a leadership that is willing to take the risk. And I think it's a risk worth taking because we've got to save the country.
Couldn't say it better.
We're on the brink of bankruptcy unless people have courage and step up, and that's what I want to see done.
That's why you're there, my friend. We appreciate you doing what you do, and you're doing a great job. Keep the fight going in D.C. because I really think that we can get some things done. We get more folks in the Senate to cooperate. I think we can do this. I really do.
Well, if we grow some courage in the House as well.
Excellent. Louie Gohmert, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeff. Always good to talk to you.